Very good afternoon to you. And sorry, I'm glad that you could find time to be with us this afternoon here at the latest news, making headlines from across the continent of Africa. We start with Liberia. Political parties in Liberia on Tuesday signed a peace accord to prevent violence ahead of October presidential and legislative elections. President George Weah said the accord signed by 26 political parties shows the country's commitment to national stability during the polls. The pact obligates signatories and their supporters to uphold peaceful elections and resort to constitutional means if they are dissatisfied with the electoral process and outcomes. Members of observer missions from African Union, the European Union and other diplomats witnessed the signing of the accord. The elections are expected to be hotly contested, with the incumbent facing strong challenges from the Vice President Joseph Boakai of the former ruling Unity Party and Alexander Cummings of the collaborating political parties. And then we head over to Nigeria, where Senate has approved the China Development Bank as the new financier for a rail project which is set to cost close to $1 billion. Another Chinese lender had been due to fund the line between Kaduna and Kano, the largest city in the north, but it pulled out in 2020 when President Muhammadu Buhari came to power 8 years ago. He prioritized upgrading the country's poor transport network and power supply. However, funding has been a major constraint. Parliament has approved several $1 billion worth of loans from Chinese and other international lenders, but funds have yet to materialize. When President-elect Bola Tinubu takes over in May, he will inherit a raft of challenges, including double-digit inflation and widespread insecurity. The International Committee of the Red Cross, ICRC, says 19 soldiers abducted by rebels in the Central African Republic in February have been released. An ICRC official said the group seized during a raid in the north of the country were due to arrive in the northern town of Birao before being transferred to the capital Bangui last month. An alliance of rebel groups, the Coalition of Patriots for Change, was blamed for an attack on a gold mine that left 9 Chinese workers dead. The rebels blamed the Russian mercenary group Wagner, its fighters that have been hired to help the government defeat the rebels. And the Zimbabwean government says it has ordered an investigation into reports of gold smuggling and money laundering. Information Minister Monica Mushangwa says the authorities take allegations raised in a TV documentary series by the broadcaster Al Jazeera very seriously. She said that anyone involved in corruption and fraud will face the full wrath of the law. The TV programs use undercover reporters to reveal what they say are criminal networks linked to subsidiary of Zimbabwe Central Bank smuggling gold to Dubai. Gold has become the country's biggest export. And the United Nations and humanitarian partners in Malawi are calling for $70.6 million to help more than 1 million people who were affected by Cyclone Freddy. The storm, which also hit Mozambique and Madagascar, killed hundreds of people and displaced more than 650,000 in southern Malawi. The United Nations says the flash appeal will provide shelter, nutrition, health, water and sanitation for those hardest hit by the crisis. The appeal comes on top of the $45.3 million called for earlier this year by humanitarian partners to respond to a cholera outbreak, bringing the total revised flash appeal to $115.9 million. The U.S. now says the funds would enable it to work swiftly in support of the Malawi government-led response to assist communities affected by Cyclone Freddy and the cholera pandemic. We go to Nigeria. Back to Nigeria. The federal government on Tuesday said the Labour Party presidential candidate Peter Obi and his running mate Dati Baba Ahmed risk being prosecuted for treason over some of their utterances on the February 25th presidential election. The Minister of Information and Culture, Lai Mohammed, who gave the warning in Washington, United States on Tuesday, said Obi and Baba Ahmed's statements amounted to insurrection. He added that Obi and his running mate were inciting people to violence over the outcome of the polls. But the Labour Party candidate and the People's Democratic Party refuted the allegations, describing them as reckless. PDP and the LP warned the federal government against toying with the idea of arresting the ex-governor of Anambra State, since All Progressive Congress candidate Asiwaju Bola Tinubu was declared as the president-elect, having polled 8,794,726 votes to defeat the People's Democratic Party candidate Atiku Abubakar and Obi, who got 6,984,520 and 6,101,533 votes, respectively. The Labour Party candidate and his running mate have been faulting the electoral process. Despite filing petitions challenging the election results in the presidential election petition, Tribunal, Obi and Baba Ahmed have insisted on the cancellation of the poll, which they claimed was characterized by rigging and violence. We go to South Africa, and more than 200 activists gathered outside the Ugandan High Commission in South Africa to demonstrate against the anti-gay bill recently passed by Ugandan lawmakers. The activists, led by South Africa's leftist Economic Freedom Fighters Opposition Party, urged Ugandan President Yoweri Museveni not to sign the bill into law. Homosexuality is outlawed in Uganda, but the recent bill has introduced harsh punishment for several acts, including the death penalty and up to 20 years imprisonment. The passing of the Ugandan bill has received widespread condemnation by the international community and those promoting the rights of LGBTQ people in Uganda across the continent. Okay, and then we end our bulletin from Guinea. A court in the country has found 3 doctors guilty in connection with the death of a young woman who was raped in a hospital. The government said in 2021 that Ma Sila had died in Tunisia, where she had been evacuated for treatment after being raped. The case caused a great deal of outrage in Guinea. A court in the capital, Conakry, has now sentenced Daniel and Patrice Lama to 15 years in prison, and a third doctor, Celestine Milimuna, who is on the run, was given a 20-year sentence. They were all found guilty of assault and battery, as well as carrying out an abortion. And Patrice Lama and Milimuna were also found guilty of a rape, and that marks the end of our bulletin this afternoon. We shall not spend so much time. Maybe just hold on. The first news item I started with, can we just look at that very quickly? So Liberia, Liberia is gearing up for its elections later on in October. And so the parties that are, the candidates that are running, or the parties that are finding candidates for these elections met yesterday in the presence of observer missions from African Union, the European Union, and other diplomats, as they signed an accord to say that they will work together and they will not, to prevent violence. Basically, this is what they were signing to. And this I've really not discovered, but I've been monitoring, and from different countries that have been holding elections in the recent past year, the continent, this has become something that people do. But even in instances that they come together, they sign a deal to work together and promote peace, a lot of times we've seen that has not been the case. So why is this only happening in Africa? Why? Is it as our electoral process, is it that volatile? That violence is part of it, and now we have to commit and to sign an accord and to agree that we shall not promote or operate within parameters of violence, or we shall not promote anything that might cause violence, or we shall watch our words. Can this just be something that a responsible leader would think to do without even signing any kind of a peace accord and say, I will carry out my campaigns in a responsible manner, in a way that will not incite any form of violence, and just campaign on the basis of my agenda and the things that I intend to do to the people of that country should I be elected in a position of leadership. So these peace accords is something that I've seen has become really a thing now. In Zimbabwe, I guess they will sign one, or I think they already did. And also they've been talking so much about peace and the importance of promotion of peace by the different parties and actors that are involved in this year's election, because also there things are getting very heated. So why is it that these peace accords in and around the electioneering periods are signed in Africa? Can we really not do things right at all, unless we are under pressure or under something? And then when this peace accord is being signed, the European Union is present, the observers, they're present there. I guess they're the ones who must have pushed for this. Tell those Africans to sign this accord and commit to a peaceful electoral process. It is such a shame. Yeah, we should love our countries enough to know that when I am campaigning or when I'm seeking for leadership, then I shouldn't be promoting or doing anything that might jeopardize the stability of my country. I think that should be the thought process of any responsible leader. And for you to be forced in a way to maintain peace or to act as if, and yet we know these accords, they don't even respect them. They will not respect them. They'll still go ahead and incite goons and attack other people's campaigns and attack other people's character and be insulting and all these things that really will jeopardize all these peace accords they keep signing. We've seen that happening in so many other African countries. Nigeria, they did sign a peace accord sometimes back last year. And what did we witness? There is even a Senate candidate who was beaten and burned inside the car, and his supporters, and all of that. So this means nothing if it really does not come, if it has not been embedded in in these people. If that is not what they stand for truly, and that is not what they actually are for, it does not matter what they sign. If they're violent, they're violent, period. If that is politics is a dirty game, and however you get to the position of power, if it involves violence and you must get there, then they will use it. So as much as this is, I think, a good thing, and I'd like to sit here and clap for it, but do we really have to sign these accords for us to know that the importance of peace? A country like Liberia has gone through tumultuous times before, has gone through a civil war, has gone through all that, but now it has stabilized, which is a good thing. And so you would think that they've learned the importance of peace, and they really don't need anybody standing on their shoulders and having them sign a peace accord at all. They should know the value of peace. So it's a wonderful thing, but surely it really doesn't have to be like that. Our president, history has taught us that the risk of post-conflict countries to regress to war is extremely high. By any account, therefore, Liberia is a post-conflict success story. Yes, Liberia has gone through very tough times over a civil war that, really, really messed up that country. So I think they could be right on signing this peace accord, but really, do we really have to sign peace accords for us to know the importance of peace? That is, I guess, my argument this afternoon, because this has been something that we've seen happen in so many other African countries. And even after signing these peace accords, the same leaders don't respect these peace accords. They're still the violators of these accords, and they still go ahead and promote acts and things and whatever that goes against these peace accords that they have signed. Okay. All right, so let me see. Another story that I wanted for us to just touch on very quickly. Of course, the appeal for Malawi. Malawi really suffered from that cyclone. And the last I was looking at this story here, I was just wondering why African countries are not in a haste to help Malawi. We've seen some African countries coming in very quickly. When we had that deadly earthquake in what do you call it, in Turkey, and its border with Syria, and we saw it was really terrible, claimed so many lives. And few African countries were quick to rush and offer their support and help, which is great and wonderful. So many of our countries, when we were struck with tragedy, it took other people coming into our countries and helping us really in times that we need. But it is the response that this natural calamity Malawi experienced, and the response from other African countries that has really astounded me. Malawi is in dire need. I guess it's not big enough. It's not in the magnitude of the earthquake, but still, this cyclone caused a wreck and a havoc in parts of Malawi, and there are people whose lives have changed forever. There are people who lost all their livelihood, everything they've worked for all of their lives. And so I think it would have been nice that some African countries would reach out and say, we're offering this food aid, or we're offering these kinds of things, but we've not seen that kind of brotherliness and that support and that ujamaa, or that ubuntu, as they say in Southern Africa. We've not seen that kind of love being extended to the people of Malawi. And so I just question us sometimes, because if this was some other country, maybe a few of our countries would have given up some of these things and taken to these people. But the response to this crisis in Malawi has been rather quite non-existent among the African countries. I don't know if SADC has been able to do something about it, because 3 of its members were affected, also in Mozambique, and where else? It was Malawi, Mozambique, and Madagascar, but theirs was not as much as what happened in Malawi. So Malawi is really, really suffering. And the U.S. resident coordinator in Malawi, Rebecca Ada Donto, said Malawians have mobilized to support one another in this time of tremendous need, and the appeal aimed to step up solidarity as the international community. The cyclone destroyed many bridges and cut off roads in Malawi, making many areas reachable only by boats and aircraft. Government statistics show that the cyclone left at least 676 people dead, and the death toll is expected to rise as more than 600 others are still missing. Werani Chilenga, chairperson for the Committee on Natural Resources and Climate Change in Malawi's parliament, said the devastation caused by the cyclone could have been less had the country done a better job of managing its natural resources. So we're also battling the issue of mismanagement and managing of natural resources. I'd like to look further into these statements and see what she really means by this. But it is a catastrophe, and for right now, I think pointing fingers will not be the right thing to do. Maybe after this has been settled and these people have been settled back, maybe they would want to look at how the country can better manage natural resources and how they can better prepare for any kind of this emergency, since now they live in the country, parts of the country is in the eye of the storm, so they might want to do something about it and have some mitigating factors and how to respond to that next time should this happen, God forbid, if it happens again. Now I'm looking for a communication from the Zimbabwean government yesterday. You know that story, investigative piece that ran on Al Jazeera. I think it was a 2-part piece. I think it was 2 parts, and so it was released maybe 2 weeks ago. Sorry, maybe about 2 weeks ago. And yesterday, Minister of Information, Publicity and Broadcasting Services put up a statement on behalf of the government of Zimbabwe. So it's not such a long statement. So I'd just like to read through it very quickly. Dated on the 4th of April 2023, government takes note of a documentary titled Gold Mafia, currently being serialized by an international broadcasting channel, which purports to expose a network of alleged money laundering and gold smuggling in Zimbabwe. Government takes the allegations raised in the documentary seriously and has directed relevant organs to institute investigations into the issues raised therein. Any person found to have engaged in acts of corruption, fraud, or any form of crime will face the full wrath of the law. Government takes this opportunity to reaffirm its commitment to upholding local and international laws, including laws relating to financial transactions, the trade of gold and other precious minerals. Boastful behavior and name-dropping by some personalities featured in the documentary seeking personal gain and glory should never be taken as an enunciation of government's policy. Government remains seized with the matter, and the nation will be kept apprised of any new developments. Signed, M. Mushavanga, Senator and Minister of Information, Publicity and Broadcasting and Broadcasting Services. Very well. So that is the statement by the Zimbabwe's government position on this matter, and I think they did well by releasing this report, and I think they're very smart in how they even crafted this press release. I don't know if there was any right way for the government to respond to this matter. I took my time to watch the two-part investigative piece. I don't know if there will be a third part, but I took my time and I watched it because it was trending, and I had a fear of missing out. So I really wanted to know what was really going on. And there is a particular pastor, calls himself a prophet or something like that, and he seems to be the super diplomat who has been representing Zimbabwe in so many other aspects. So he was, boasting and all that, his connection and his proximity to the presidency and all that, and to the leadership of Zimbabwe. And I think from what I gathered from this investigative piece was how Zimbabwean wealth was being fleeced by, and one character, Kamlesh Patni from Kenya, was just in the storm of it. He had almost a similar scandal here many years ago, the golden bag, that really something that he was doing that really messed up our economy. So when President Kibaki came into power in 2002, the tribunal was set up to investigate this golden bag. It was a company that was being run by Kamlesh Patni, and all of a sudden he converted, he became a Christian. Now he's called Brother Paul, and this Brother Paul is a very sketchy character, so he's been very quiet. He even opened a church in one of the Kenyan suburbs. But I wondered what became of him. He's a very clever person, went quiet, so nobody talks about him, nobody looks for him. But he took his cleverness to Zimbabwe, and he's been there fleecing. So when you watch through that documentary, I think for me, the takeout was just feel sorry for what is happening for Zimbabwe and the people who purport to have that close proximity to the government, and how much they're using that influence to really fleece Zimbabwe, basically. So the government, that statement perhaps has so much to read through the lines about, but I will not do that this afternoon. So I will just leave that there, but they'll say they will investigate. So listen, government of Zimbabwe, I'll be waiting to hear your investigation. I'm happy that you did not counter that and say there were lies and all that, because it will be your word against Al Jazeera. And Al Jazeera did its investigation. So I like that you say that you will investigate on your part, and then you can match the facts and see what was said in that investigative piece and what have you find out on your own, and using your own investigation. So I'd be waiting. Yeah, I hope this is, well, it's very much a public relations exercise, but I'm hoping, I'm being very idealistic here, I'm hoping that actually these are not just empty words, empty rhetorics, but that you will go further and actually investigate, because I'm sure a lot of Zimbabweans would like to know where the truth lies from what was said and from government position. And if the government truly goes ahead and investigate, they would like to know your findings so that we can come back here and compare the notes. Personally, I'm invested, so I really want to know. So, I'll be waiting here to see what you happen to find out about that, whatever that is. Or you find out about that investigative piece that was done by Al Jazeera. Okay. I think I'd like to stop here for right now this afternoon. I want to thank you so much for your time. Enjoy the rest of your day. This has been Diaspora Dispatches. My name is Mira Magutu. Bye-bye for now.